Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we will learn the Gemara Masechta Shabbos on Daf Tesam and Beis. Let's begin with a general outline of this class. We're beginning a new Mishnah, which will teach that a person may not do certain things before Tfilas Mincha, because we're concerned that if he gets involved in one of the 5 things mentioned in the Mishnah, he'll come to forget about davening and he'll miss Mincha. And then there are 2 parts of the Gemara. It's basically a question and an answer. So begin with the question. Number 1, the Gemara will ask that it seems that our Mishnah refers to Mincha Ktana and argues with Rabbi Shua ben Levi. It would seem that our Mishnah that says it's also to do these 5 things is referring to the time of Mincha Ktana. That's when it is usher. And the reason is because then there's much less time left of the day. But if that's the case, it comes out that our Mishnah argues with Rabbi Shua ben Levi, and then we come to number 2, which is the answer. The Gemara will answer that our Mishnah refers to Mincha Gdela and explain why then is there an Isser at such an early time. If it's referring to Mincha Gdela, which is very early in the day, why do we prohibit doing one of these 5 things if there's still so much time left to the day? So let's see the Gemara now in the flowchart form. So we begin with a Mishnah that says a person may not sit down by a barber near the time of Mincha until he first davens. And like Rashi says, near the time of Mincha means a half an hour before the time of Mincha. So the first thing mentioned that a person is not permitted to do near the time of Mincha is to get a haircut. The Mishnah moves on now to mention another 4 things. So number 1 is to be by the barber. Number 2 is a person shouldn't either enter a bathhouse for the bathing. Number 3, a tannery where they treat hides. Number 4 is to eat a meal. And number 5 is as a judge to a din Torah. So there are the 5 things that a person is not allowed to do near the time of Mincha because we're concerned he might come to forget to daven Mincha. The Mishnah continues. And if one began already, if a person did begin one of these things which are prohibited, but a person already did it, so it's bidi evet, it's not lechatchila, he's not allowed to. However, if he already did, says the Mishnah, he doesn't have to stop, rather he can daven afterwards. So we're not saying he doesn't have to stop and he could just continue doing what he's doing and disregard mincha. What we're saying is he could continue, and we're not going to concern ourselves that he might come to forget mincha. We'll rely on that he'll remember and he will daven mincha. And then the Mishnah concludes by saying, one must stop for Krishma, but one must not stop for Tefillah. This that we said, that if a person started, he doesn't have to stop, it's not true by Krishma. For Krishma, a person would have to stop. And by Tefillah, that's when he doesn't have to stop, and he can continue and daven afterwards. So that's the whole Mishnah. Now we go to the Gemara. So the Gemara begins by information that leads into a question, and that's why it's in a purple arrow pointing downwards, because it's leading into a question. So the Gemara is going to introduce some ideas that are going to be the backdrop to a question. So the Gemara says, which mincha does this refer to? When we said a person is not allowed to do these things near the time of mincha, which mincha is it referring to? There's mincha gdela and there's mincha ktana. So says the Gemara, if you'll say it's mincha gdela, which is very early in the day, where there's still a lot of time left to daven, why not? But there's still a lot of time. It doesn't make sense that we would make it us or prohibited to do these things because of a concern that a person would miss mincha. There's still so much time left to the day where a person is allowed to daven. So therefore the Gemara concludes, rather it's mincha ktana. And now that we have this information in place, the Gemara says this leads into a question. And the question is, and if one began already, he doesn't have to stop? We're talking about now, we said mincha ktana. So by mincha ktana, if a person started one of these 5 things, he doesn't have to stop. So let's say this is a question of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, because like we're going to bring down in a moment, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that after mincha ktana, a person's not allowed to eat anything, and if he's in the middle of eating, he does have to stop. So the Gemara says, let's say this is a question of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. And what's the question? So we bring the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi in a purple arrow pointing upwards. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, when mincha ktana arrives, a person can't taste anything. And from the fact that he says, asur sheyitim klum, he's not allowed to taste anything, the indication is that if he began eating, he still has to stop. So it seems that our Mishnah is arguing on Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. And the Gemara answers, Loi la'olam, no, in truth, it's referring to mincha gedela. It's referring to mincha gedela. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that a person has to stop eating. It's talking about by mincha ktana time, when it's much later in the day, and there's much less time left to daven. Our Mishnah that says that if a person started, he could still continue, and he doesn't have to stop, it's all referring to mincha gedela. But now we need to support this answer. Because originally we said that it doesn't make sense that our Mishnah is referring to mincha gdela, because then why would it be usher? There's still a long time, there's still a lot of time left to daven mincha. We shouldn't be concerned that a person will miss mincha. So the Gemara gives 2 different ways of understanding it. It's in a purple arrow pointing upwards because it's supporting the answer. So we're going to go through all 5 things of the Mishnah and explain why they're usher. So by a haircut, because it's a haircut of Ben Elasha. Ben Elasha was a son-in-law of Rebbe who wanted to copy the haircut that the Kohen Gadol got, and this haircut took a very long time to be performed, and therefore it's also to do such a haircut near the time of Mincha Gedela, even though it's very early in the day. Regarding a bathhouse, it's when it says Loy Lemerch, it's not to the baths, it's talking about the whole process. And like Rashi says, the person washes his head, then he washes his body with cold water, then with hot water, and then he goes into to sweat. So it's a very long process. It could lead that a person will miss Mincha even though it's very early in the day. And then we said not to a tannery. We're talking about a large tannery. And like Rashi explains, where a person has a lot of hides, and it's at the very beginning of their process, which takes a very lengthy amount of time. Then when we said not to eat, we're referring to a large meal, like if a person goes to a wedding. So then it's possible that a person could come to miss Mincha. And the last and final thing is not to a din Torah. Not to a din Torah, it's talking about at the start of the din Torah, where then we don't know how long it's going to take. A din Torah could draw out for a very long amount of time. So that's one explanation for why these 5 things are not allowed to be done close to the time of even Mincha Gedela. It's because we're referring to them when they could take a very long amount of time. The Gemara now gives an alternative way of explaining that it's referring to Mincha Gedela and answering why these things are also so early in the day, that it's not talking about when they take a very long time because it's a haircut of Ben Elisha, because it's the whole process of the bathhouse, and so on and so forth, but rather even a short one would be Asr. And the Gemara says, it brings from Rav Acha ben Yaakov. So Rav Acha ben Yaakov said, it's talking about a regular haircut. Even a regular haircut a person can do close to the time of Mincha Gedela. And why not? So he's going to go through each one and mention it and ask why not, but it's all part of the purple arrow pointing upwards. And why not? Why can't a person take a haircut so early in the day? The scissor may break, and therefore that could end up taking a long time. The person has to get the scissor fixed or get a new scissor, and we're concerned that it'll lead that he'll miss Mincha. And when it says not to the bathhouse, it's talking about just to sweat, not the whole process. And why not? Why can't a person do it so early in the day? Because we're concerned he may faint because of the heat from the steam. And continue on to the next thing that the Mishnah said, and not to a tannery. It's talking about just to inspect. The person's not coming with a lot of hides at the beginning of the process. And why not? Why then can't the person do it so early in the day? He may see something wrong with his stuff, and then he'll become very worried and concerned and in pain, and he'll come to miss Tfilas Mincha. And when we said not to eat, that's referring to a small meal. And why not? Why can a person have a small meal so early in the day? The Gemara explains it might extend and end up turning into a long meal. Shema Yemashech, he might end up extending, the meal might end up extending. And not to a din Torah, it's talking about the end of it. Even the end of a din Torah a person cannot participate in, although it's so early in the day, if he didn't yet daven mincha. And why not? Because a new point may come up. Maybe they're going to come up with a new point. So even though they're ready to make a ruling, a new perspective, a new point, new information might come up, and then they're going to have to undo everything that they ruled up to that point and start over again from start. So with that, we finished the Gemara. So just to summarize, we presented the Mishnah that said that 5 things are also to do near the time of Mincha. We said if a person started, he doesn't have to stop. And we said, however, for Krishma, he would have to stop. Then the Gemara said it seems that our Mishnah is referring to Mincha Ktana, because by Mincha Gedela, we wouldn't make it prohibited to do these things because it's so early in the day. The Gemara said if that's the case, it's a contradiction. It's a question on Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Because Rabbi Shua ben Levi said that by Mincha Ktana, if a person started eating, he would have to stop. And our Mishnah said that once the person started, he doesn't have to stop. So the Gemara explained that our Mishnah is actually referring to Mincha Gedela. It's much earlier in the day, and that's why if the person started, he doesn't have to stop. And then regarding our question, why would we even make it Asr if it's so early in the day? The Gemara gave 2 different answers. One was that it's referring to these things that they take when they take a extended amount of time. We're referring to a haircut, a very long haircut. The bathhouse, when the person is going for the whole process. The tannery with a lot of hides, and the whole process of tanning the hides. To eat, we're talking about a large meal, and to a din Torah, we're talking about the beginning of it. And the second answer the Gemara gave is that even when they're short, it would still be Asr. The reason is by the haircut, because the scissor might break. By the bathhouse, even if it's just a sweat, a person may faint. By a tannery, a person might come, even though it's not the beginning of the process. He might see that there was a loss, and he's going to become very pained and preoccupied by this concern. To eat, although it's a short meal, but it might end up becoming a long meal. And to a din Torah, it's even at the end, we're concerned that maybe a new point will come up, and they're going to have to start all over again from scratch.